Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Relationship Atlas podcast. I'm your host, Coach Atlas, and I appreciate your patience. It's been a couple weeks since we've been able to get out another brand new episode here on the Relationship Atlas podcast. Life has been busy on our side, there's a lot of transition. I may have mentioned this in a past episode, but Gabby and I recently moved from outside of the inner city to the suburbs, and it's actually a pretty big move for us specifically because we like the chaos of the inner city life. We like the high energy, we like the high pace. There's a reason why we really love the city of Toronto. And so living in the suburbs has not been something we've been a part of since we were kids, or at least since we were teenagers. And so it's a pretty abrupt difference, to say the least. And the calm, the casual, the slow, is great and over time will be really good for our nervous systems. But initially, it has been a little bit of a shock. And ironically, the drive back into the downtown area for our work has kind of kept us in the chaos, but has created a bit more of a navigation. We're navigating. Everything in our sphere of life is a new navigation. And so we are grateful to be here and grateful for the experience of the calm and the slow. It's just a different system. And if you've ever gone through a transition in your life, I think it's really helpful to catch these kinds of things because it can seem as if it was the wrong choice or what did we do or maybe we shouldn't have made this call. You can start to really get uh, over the top with your assumptions and stories about what's currently happening for you in the change when the change is just simply showing you a different part of something that maybe isn't fully developed or is a skill you don't have yet or is just different. And the normalcy of difference, I think, is really what we're trying to hold on to as we move through this. So here we are back at it with another episode. And as I was looking and curating for what would be best to share today, what would be best to talk about, I really got to thinking about the move that we just made. I got to think about the challenges we've rubbed up against over this new season, this change in seasons. And what came up was mental load. Now, if you're familiar with mental load, bear with me as I describe what this is. But essentially, think about when you're single and you're alone, you have all of these responsibilities that you need to take care of, right? You need to take care of your phone bill, you need to take care of your car, you need to take care of your bedroom, your home, and your job. You need to take care of the people in your circle. Like there's things that you need to take care of. You have responsibilities. And all of those responsibilities involve a certain level of mental load, depending on how efficient those systems are, depending on how well you maintain them, and just simply dependent on your life and how it's going and how you are operating internally and externally. And so there are certain times where that mental load becomes too much. And maybe we don't make our bed today, or we don't do the dishes today, or we doom scroll for 2 hours, or fill in the blank. There are days where the mental load can feel a little difficult. So that would be the quickest way to describe what a mental load is. How much are you carrying mentally? And then now I want to bring that into the conversation of a relationship. And I want to bring to our awareness how much more is now involved or added to that quote, quote, mental load. So we come into a relationship with our own already full mental load. Then we have this other person now that is involved in the conversation, involved in our experience. They have their own mental load. Then what we get added to our mental load is caring for, loving, providing for, mm, working with, fill in the blank, right? You can hear all the ways in which navigating life with another person adds to the information that you need to process on a daily basis. Then you add in the extras that come along with that person and what you end up building. So, for example, if you lived separately, you were both responsible for your own homes, and that's a part of your mental load. When you come together, now you're both responsible for the same home. And what can go awry and what tends to go awry is when the mental load of, let's say, a house or a home is not equal, or at least is not clearly communicated around what systems are in place for us to navigate this now home that we have together. So the mental load conversation is a part of our lives. It's part of every single relationship. And in a lot of relationships, it's actually quite a large challenge because it's not being talked about enough. So let's talk about it. Firstly, when it comes to the home, you can start to hear where this might come into play and why it would cause difficulties. So for example, if you haven't had a conversation in your relationship where you have determined who kind of does what around the house, then one person is likely carrying a much heavier mental load than the other person. In all honesty, there's probably one person who's avoiding it, or may have an expectation of the other person that they got it, or may have an expectation that they have to take it all on. There are predisposed or historical stories that we do carry about mental loads into our relationship. And they come from what we witnessed growing up, they come from our cultures, they come from our backgrounds, and they can come from previous relationships. And so all of this comes into this relationship that we're currently in now and influences the way we operate. So I may walk into a relationship knowing that in my past, I didn't really see the man do a whole lot of housework. So I'm coming in with this predisposed story that there's not really a lot that I should be doing. Now, thankfully, on my side, that's actually not my story. I flipped that story, and I actually believe that I am heavily responsible for most, if not all, of the housework. So I actually do my best to always stay on top of it. The only thing that I don't love doing is the goddamn shower. I don't know if anybody else can relate, but cleaning the shower is my one thing that I just can't stand doing. But everything else I'm pretty on board with. So I actually created a different story for myself on what I am responsible for. And naturally, again, that put a different type of mental load into my field of awareness. Now, traditionally, this is not the case. And there is a traditional narrative that a woman cares for the house and the man brings in the money. And so there isn't what is determined as a fair share of the mental load. Now, the interesting part about this mental load conversation is that it can come into the forefront of needing to be behaviors or actions. But I like to separate mental load from actual action, meaning I don't necessarily need to say do all of the housework, for example, but I do need to keep it in my field of awareness and add it to my mental load to be able to direct, take care of, provide, care for. Like, this is, if I'm not thinking about it ever, then my partner then has 100% of the mental load. But if I'm thinking about it, if I'm trying to plan on how it's going to get done, if I'm trying to organize, if I'm trying to structure, if I mentally care or I mentally put an effort and show that effort in the relationship, then I'm holding some of the mental load and my partner is holding some of the mental load. And so it can feel a lot lighter for both people. And there's likely a system in place when that happens. So, housework is a pretty large example of mental loads in the relationship. So, if you are in a relationship right now listening to this and you notice that you don't really think about the home, you don't really think about its cleanliness, you don't think about when was the last time something was cleaned, if you don't think about caring for or specific parts of the household, then I just would like to invite you to consider how much of a mental load your partner is carrying and what it can do to that person to try to hold that, try to carry that, and try to be the only person involved in that part of your relationship. Because again, if you're living in the same home, the home is a part of your relationship. It's not a me home, it's a we home. So just give some effort into that and have a conversation. Go into it and say, listen, I'm noticing that I don't really think about the household. And it was kind of shocking for me to realize this. And so I don't think that's fair. So let's talk about it. Like, what do you think about? And they may say, I think about everything all the time. And I'm always wondering when I can take care of that and how I can take care of that and when can I clean that. And that may be a really helpful conversation for you to understand what they're carrying, what you're carrying, and how you can start to create a bit more of a safe, secure, and well understood mental load around housework and the home. Let's move into some other areas of mental load just to continue to deepen our understanding of how this impacts our relationship. One of the louder ones that comes up for me would be planning date nights, right? So, who carries that mental load? And is it fair? Is it equal? What kind of systems do you have in place to equalize or create a fair experience for both parties? If one person is always doing date night without that being the agreement, then it can likely cause a form of resentment or frustration. Now, maybe it doesn't, and that person actually really loves it and it's a passion of theirs. Absolutely. No problem. It's going to be nice for them to receive a plan every now and again. But if they already love that part of the relationship, then it's just as simply as saying, hey, listen, I just want you to know I actually really love doing this. So don't worry about it. For example, in my relationship, separate from date night, I actually quite enjoy sweeping. I don't know what it is. It's slightly meditative. It's calming. I like the simplicity of it. And so I said, you never need to sweep. I will always sweep. The other day, I took the broom from her. And I said, hey, listen, I got it. I love sweeping. And so these little pieces of us that we really don't mind at all, we want to lean into them and just say, listen, I got that. But the other parts that don't feel quite as aligned, that's where the mental load can become a little bit more confusing. And that's what we want to try to clean up. So planning date night, planning vacations comes in as well, right? Who's really owning that? Who's planning those things? And who visibly, through actions and conversations, is clearly caring about it more? And how do we start to shift how that operates or create an agreement like, listen, I really do want to go on a vacation. I just don't have the energy to plan it. And honestly, I'm good with wherever. I just want you to know, like, listen, if you're good with it, take the reins. I'm going to be happy regardless. Now, you can't then not be happy with the results. That's not how that works. However, if you're going to give up the mental load, then just be confident that you're good with giving up the mental load. Just like when Gabby is good with giving up sweeping, she's like, yeah, I don't like sweeping. So great, take it. So again, small things can create big results. So micro action creates macro results. There's a couple other things that are really, really crucial in this mental load conversation. So we talked about housework and general house care. We talked about planning date night and vacations. There's a couple other pieces like tracking groceries, for example, right? Who owns that? Who's carrying that? Food is incredibly important. And for all of us, it's survival. So who's really putting their foot forward in that? And even if nothing needs to change, a simple acknowledgement can actually be really helpful here. Hey, listen, I really appreciate that you care for our groceries the way that you do. I know it's kind of weird and I know you just do it, but I really appreciate that you're always on it. We always have food in the home, and I really appreciate that. Because a lot of times, these mental load conversations, like people like myself, we're just doing these things and it's just the way we operate. And so it's really nice when someone can witness us and say, hey, I did notice that you did that. I appreciate that. It's an incredible form of obviously gratitude that goes a long way in the relationship. Another aspect of mental load comes up with kids. And this is a very big conversation. Who is carrying the mental load of kids and everything that comes with the child? When it comes to doctor visits, when it comes to packing lunches, school trips, exercise, fill in the blank. All right. I don't have kids, but I have dogs. And for a while, I actually wasn't carrying this mental load. I really was uncommunicatively giving that mental load to Gabby. She was having to worry about, did they get enough exercise? Are they eating enough? Are they healthy? Are they da 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 da? And I was so busy, lost in my life and everything else, that I wasn't really carrying the mental load of the puppuccinos. And so it took us a while, but I was able to then reflect and really face myself and say, oh, that's so fascinating. I actually love these dogs and I love caring for them. So I'm not quite sure why I'm disconnected from it, but I don't want you to carry that entire load. So I will then shift the way I'm operating and we can create a better agreement together. And it started to work out really well. And now we really don't talk about it too much because we've been able to create a really good system of fairness where we are always looking for opportunities on both sides to be able to give in that area without expectation of something in return. And it's working really well. So when it comes to kids, I mean, that's much more important, I would say. Not that dogs aren't important, but a child's life is powerful, impactful, all encompassing. And so, what are the agreements and systems that you have in place so that one person isn't carrying the entire load? The difficulty is that a lot of times this does fall on the mother. And there are a lot of biological factors that kind of come into this. And I think I recently heard something like the child doesn't really know that they're separate from their mom until like after 1 year old. And so that's why sometimes they say data first. I found that really fascinating. I don't know how deep the science goes behind it, but I loved the concept because I think it's just very interesting that data is usually the first thing they say. Why is that? Maybe it's because they don't know that they're separate from mom yet. So, anyways, when we think about caring for a child, how much of what's involved, feeding times, feeding temperatures, bedtime, enough rest, enough exercise, enough love, enough skin touch, enough the proper discipline, the right schools, the right snacks, the right, you fill in the blank, right? There's a lot that comes with a kid. And so, who's carrying that? Think about how much you think about it and how much you prioritize thinking about it, and you'll have your answer. And then consider, okay, well, how much does my partner bring up stuff? How much do I bring up stuff? And you'll also find your answer. And this is a really helpful, not to guilt or to shame, but just to simply recognize, okay, there's an incompatible or incongruent mental load being offered here that hasn't been talked about enough. I'm going to lead the way here and let's figure this out together. Let's come to a different understanding, not only because I don't want it to be unfair, but maybe I'm on the side of not thinking about it and I feel bad. Or I'm on the side of always thinking about it and I can't handle it anymore. I need support mentally. I need to be able to rest sometimes knowing that I have a full support system who also considers the things that I consider. Now, of course, we have the moments where we're considering things that may seem out of the ordinary or unnecessary or not important. And that is a separate conversation from the mental load because now we're talking a bit more about a person's authenticity and the way that they operate, which is not necessarily mental load. It's more of an embracing of differences. So it's a bit of a different conversation, but it finds itself in here because we can think, well, why? I don't know why you always have to think like that, like everything is all good. Well, I'm not quite sure what you're so worried about. Why are you so stressed about it? Everything is fine. And that is a conversation, not necessarily about mental load, but about an incongruent system set up around what is important here and how do we both show that it's of value to me. Other things that come up to close, just so again, we're thinking in terms of a full zoom out. We think about financial planning. That's a really big one. We think about like meals, when to cook, when to start. We think about when household chores should be complete, when should we leave for events. We think about vehicle and house maintenance. We think about just general scheduling and planning. Everything in a relationship dynamic involves some sort of mental load and somebody is carrying it. And so what I'm bringing to the forefront is the necessity of finding out who's carrying it. Are they okay? And what needs to change? How do we create a more congruent, compatible, and lasting system? And maybe it's not forever because life will include different things, and maybe you'll get another dog, or you'll have another child, or you'll get a different home, and things will shift as they do, which requires just a different conversation about who's caring for what, who's supporting what, and who is responsible for what ultimately. Because if we're both uncertain, well, then we're probably frustrated. And we're probably not feeling settled in our system because we have to think about it. We have to worry about it. So this conversation actually allows for us to settle into a system, to settle into a structure together where we both can just, okay, whew, okay, feels nice to know we're both in this, not just me. Have this conversation with your partner as soon as possible. If you haven't already, think about the different areas of your relationship and consider who has the mental load, who's carrying more, who is comfortable carrying more, and be honest with yourselves. I think a lot of times men can, including myself, can get into this idea of like, no, I got it. Don't you worry, I'm a man. Oh, I can do it all. And I will self-sacrifice. I will. And I think there's some certain parts that I tell myself that that's expected and needed in this moment. But there are other times where it's not and I still do it anyway. And that's a disconnect. And that's something that I work on so that I don't do that and that I'm aware of what the moment needs and I'm aware of where I could guide this differently, where I could reroute this differently, which I value a lot. But prior to that, I had a difficult time doing that. I really wanted the bravado of being man and I'm strong, I'm super strong, and I'm making fun of myself. And so again, right, like don't push through the mental loads. Have the conversation, and this is again to hopefully prevent any contempt or resentment down the line. Right? Ultimately, we're always looking through this podcast and through my client coaching and so on, where I'm always looking for an opportunity to support you in getting more aligned. Because so much of our challenges that we face is just simply a lack of alignment. And a lot of it is just an avoidance of a conversation or an unwillingness based on maybe some sort of protection mechanism you have built in to not want to engage with that conversation. I had a client who didn't want to talk about the laundry. And it wasn't like they were doing anything bad or wrong. It's just their system wasn't built developmentally to get into that world yet. And it might sound ridiculous and it might sound stupid, and it doesn't really matter how it sounds because it's just how it is. And so we had to work through, how do we find a level of care and importance beyond just, hey, like I really need you to care about the laundry. It's not about the laundry. None of this is about the tasks. A lot of it just simply has to do with our investment, our prioritization, and our level of value that we see beyond the task itself and in giving our best for it. So I'm going to leave that end of the conversation there. Pretty much bang on a 20-minute goal for every episode. Thank you for listening. I hope there was some value here for you. I know that there was for me, and just bringing this back up for me and connecting me back to, okay, all right, I haven't thought about this in a while. I wonder if there's something that I've missed, because there's always an opportunity to get more aligned in my relationship, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. So thank you for listening and allowing this to be mirrored back to me. And if you enjoyed this podcast, thank you so much for listening so far. If you're a regular subscriber, we just passed 300 downloads. Thank you. It's incredible. I appreciate the time and attention you've given to your relationship ultimately, because that's what this is for. It's for you and for your relationship. So I appreciate that. I'm greatly, greatly appreciative of that. Please give this a rating if you enjoyed it. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what you want to hear in the next episodes. And if you want to take this work deeper, if you want to go into the world of things like mental loads and create more congruency, more alignment, and more, honestly, love and connection in your relationship, and you're uncertain on how to maybe do the mental load processing, you're uncertain, or maybe you've tried and it's not working, I got you. I would love to be able to be a part of your journey in any way, shape, or form. I have multiple different styles of programs, and I know that somewhere in there that it would be a great fit for you and your relationship. So please reach out to me, atlasmecca@gmail.com. Please go to my socials as well, at the relationship coach _, and feel free to book in a call yourself. I'd be happy to meet with you and discuss what you're going through, support you in any way I can, and then ultimately see if it's the right fit. So again, thank you so much for listening. I'm excited to continue this work deeper with you, and I will see you in the next episode.